Today, we're going to learn how to translate math to words and words to math. We're going to have some algebraic expressions that we need to translate into words. We're going to have some words that we need to translate into algebraic expressions. So, it's sort of overwhelming at first, but what you do is you take it apart. So, let's look at number 1. 1 more than the product of 12 and p. Now, I'm going to separate it into some boxes. Okay? 1 more than is the first box. What do you think 1 more than looks like? Does it look like plus 1 or minus 1 or times 1 or divided by 1? It looks like plus 1. 1 more than is plus 1. Then, take the next part, the product of 12 and p. What does product mean? Does product mean add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Product means multiply. Well, what's multiplying? 12 and p. Okay? When it's got an and, it usually means those go together, 12 and p. The product of 12 and p. Okay? So 1 more than the product of 12 and p looks exactly like that. Okay. We took words and we changed it into math, to an algebraic expression. See how that's 1 more than, that's the plus 1, the product of 12 and p multiplied together. Let's try this one. 4 less than a number n divided by 2. I forgot to put the 2. So 4 less than is the first thing. 4 less than, does that mean plus 4, minus 4, times 4, divided by 4? Means minus 4. 4 less than, minus 4. It's something minus 4. Then you've got a number n, so it tells us we're going to call this one n, okay, divided by 2. Now, you guys are used to going n divided by 2, but this is not very algebraic. So we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it like this. N divided with the fraction bar by 2. That means the same thing. N divided by 2, n divided by 2. There you go. There's an algebraic expression. So you're taking these words and scooting them, cutting them into parts so that you can kind of figure out what they're trying to say. Now, if you're having trouble with this, there's a page in your book, page 10, that has a chart. Page 10 has a chart that kind of reminds you that product means multiply. It tells you that more than is add, and less than is subtract. So if you need to look on page 10 in order to figure some of this out, that's okay. Now, let's go the other direction. Let's take math and translate it into words. When you're translating math into words, sometimes there's more than one way to say it. You could have 2 ways that are correct. So let's try this one first and see if we can think of a couple of ways that would be right. We could say 4 minus 7 times b. This part is really important. That's not 4 minus 7b. What's happening between the 7 and the b? When 2 things are right next door to each other in algebra, like a number and a letter, that means those things are multiplying. So that's 7 times b. So that would be one way to translate it. We could say 4 minus 7 times b. Can you think of another way to say it? That's a perfectly right answer. We could say, how about 4 minus the product of 7 and b. That's kind of like the one we looked at on the first example. That's right. 4 minus the product of 7 and b. Both of those are perfectly right. There's other ways we could say it. We could say the product of 7 and b less than 4. Because the product of 7 and b, we're subtracting from 4, so less than 4. Okay, that would be okay too. This one's kind of harder and weird. These are more straightforward and easy. So when you're first starting, it's kind of good to start with the easier ones. Now look at this one. This one is like a curve ball. Just when you think you're getting the hang of it, the book threw you a curveball and they put parentheses in. By putting the parentheses in, they want to make sure that this whole thing, the 4 and the y, stays together. The parentheses are holding it together. So you got a 6 out here, and when a 6 is sitting outside parentheses, it always means multiply. So this is 6 times this whole thing. So we have to figure out a way to say this 6 times that whole thing. So how could we describe this whole thing? Well, it's 4 plus 5, 4 plus y, or it's 4 added to y, or it's 4 more than y, or it's the sum of 4 and y. Now, if we said the sum of 4 and y, wouldn't that imply parentheses? Wouldn't it show that those two things are added together? When you add these two things together, don't you call the answer the sum? So when you see parentheses and you have two things that are adding, you want to use the word sum, because the answer when you do that would be the sum, wouldn't it? So we're going to use sum in this one, and we're going to say 6 times the sum. It's kind of like saying the total, the sum of 4 and y. We could say 6 times the sum of 4 plus y. Okay, we said the sum, so that holds the 4 and the y together. Whenever you see parentheses and a plus sign in the middle, you're thinking sum. If you saw a minus sign in the middle, you would be thinking difference, because that's the answer when you subtract, the difference. Okay, now it's your turn. Try these 4 problems. The first 2, you're changing from words to math. The second 2, you're changing from math to words. Remember, when you're changing from math to words, there's usually more than one right answer. So number 1 and 2, we're going to pretty much have an exact answer. Number 3 and 4, there's some possibilities. When I do them, I'll try to answer most of the possibilities so you can see if you're getting them right. So pause the video and do the practice. Okay, let's see how you did. On problem number 1, divide it up. 5 less than. That means minus 5. So I put my minus 5 down. The product of p and 3. Well, that means they're multiplying. In algebra, when you have a variable and a coefficient multiplying, you put the number first and the variable second. So 3p minus 5. Okay, number 2, twice. Twice just means 2 times. If you ran a race twice, you ran it 2 times. So twice means 2 times. So this is really like saying 2 times the quotient. So I put my 2 here and my parentheses because I'm going to multiply. How did I know I needed parentheses? Because it just made sense to me to put it. I guess I could have put a dot and gotten the same answer. But since it said I had to have the quotient, the answer of m and 35, I used the parentheses. Quotient means divide. So m divided by 35. Remember, we're going to write divide with fraction bar instead of a divide sign. So that's what this answer looks like. Number 3, 2 times x minus 5 was our problem. We have to go from this to words. So notice the parentheses. Remember, when there's parentheses with a minus sign, you have to use the word difference. When there's parentheses and a plus sign, you need the word sum. So I said 2 times. This is 2 times that whole thing. So 2 times the difference, there's my minus sign, of x and 5. That's really the best way to say this one. Okay. Number 4, I've got you 2 different answers. They're both right. You could have said 7 less, because isn't minus 7 less? 7 less than 5 times p. 7 less than 5 times p. Or you could have just said 5 times p minus 7. Notice something. If you say 7 less, it's like the back of the problem comes first. If you say minus, it goes in order, and the 7 is in order. Does that make a little sense? Good news! No video homework tonight. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Have a great evening.